Hi, this is Usha. Welcome to Rathod's IAS classes. Today in this lecture, we are going to discuss current affairs of 27 September 2021. In this lecture, we are going to discuss 9 topics which are very much relevant to UPSC. So let's get started with our discussion and let us see the list of the topics we are going to discuss in this lecture. So first topic is about left-wing extremism. So this left-wing extremism is one of the important topic under our internal security, which comes under GS paper 3. Actually, why this left-wing extremism is in news? Because our home ministry said that there is decreasing of Maoist influence that is seen in India. So because of this, we are going to discuss about this left-wing extremism. So what is this? What are the reasons for this left-wing extremism, etc. That is important from our UPSC point of view. And next one is India and China. So recently from past 4 days onwards, there are articles which coming in newspaper regarding India and China. China is blaming India regarding India's stand is responsible for this Galwan Valley incident and as well as standoff at LACE. So India mainly rejecting those statements. So again there is one article which appeared in today's newspaper regarding this topic. We are going to discuss that. That will be important from our international relations point of view, which mainly comes under GS paper 2. And next topic is about Dal Lake. So there is one article which came with reference to this Dal Lake. So here we need to know the geographical location of this Dal Lake, which will be important from our geography point of view. And next topic we are going to discuss, it is about quota for women in judiciary. So this is one important article that I like the most. So now let us try to talk about this topic in a very great detail. Okay, so it is important from polity point of view, which comes under GS paper 2. And next one is government industry panel. Government came up with industry panel which drives a policy to review manufacturing. So due to this COVID-19 pandemic which affected almost all sectors. So even though it is affecting almost all sectors, here manufacturing sector and service sector they hit the most. And even now, till now here manufacturing sector and as well as service sector, they didn't come out of this shock due to COVID-19 pandemic. So in this context, our government came up with some industry panel, name of that is SCALE. So we are going to discuss that in great detail. This will be important from our economy point of view. And next topic we are going to discuss, it is about the proportion of all cancer cases higher in man. So this article mainly talking about cancer. So if you are talking about diseases, we are having non-communicable disease and as well as communicable disease. So communicable disease means it will be transmitted easily from one person to another person. Non-communicable means it will be not transmitted from one person to another person. So for example of this non-communicable disease, I can say like hypertension, diabetes mellitus, any diseases. Okay, for example like heart disease or kidney damage or liver disease, etc. That will be not transmitted from one person to another person. And here one more thing here is cancer will also comes under this non-communicable disease. So if you want to focus on cancer, we need to know about what is the meaning of cancer and how many types of tumor cells are present. So which type of the tumor cells leads to cancer, we need to remember that. That will come under our basic science topics. And the next topic we are going to talk about NEET. Okay, NEET, it is an entrance test to enter into MBBS after 12th class. So recently Tamil Nadu government came up with a bill mainly to abolish this NEET as an entrance test to provide social justice. We are going to discuss that in a very great detail. And next topic is about Rajasthan recently passed a law regarding marriage registration. So here there are some loopholes in this marriage registration regarding child marriages. We are going to see what are those provisions and what are the issues regarding this law. And next topic is about India-Nepal floods. So when we see monsoon enters into our India, so we will experience flood in many areas. For example, flash floods in Mumbai. And next one is urban floods that is seen in some metropolitan cities like we can say Hyderabad. And not only that, but in number of rivers and as well as tanks, they will overflow, right? So here, if you are talking about especially location of Bihar here, so it is mainly across the India and Nepal border. As we know, in this India and Nepal border, there are Himalayas over there. So from these Himalayas, there are number of perennial rivers that took birth and they will flow in this direction between these two countries. So what happened, as we all know that Bihar, it is one of the most flood prone state in India. So what are the steps that can be taken, and what is the history of water management, and what are the issues or what are the flaws we see. So we are going to discuss all these things which are very much relevant to our UPSC point of view, and this topic will be important from disaster management, which comes under GS paper 3. So these are the some list of topics and brief idea of topics we are going to discuss in this lecture. So first topic here is Maoist influence down to just 41 districts, says Home Ministry. So this article mainly talking about Maoist influence. Indirectly we can talk that under left wing extremism, right? So if you see, title mainly says that Maoist influence down to just 41 districts, but earlier it is mainly seen in many districts, but now it contracted and we can see the influence of this Maoist in 41 districts. So this is a thing which mainly said by our Home Ministry. So now let us try to see details. If you see details, it mainly says that the geographical influence of Maoist has contracted to only 41 districts in the country. Now we can see the influence of Maoists that is only in 41 districts in our country. So here earlier it was mainly found in 96 districts in our country, but it contracted to 41 districts now. So this is as per 2010. So as per 2010, in 10 states, about 96 districts they have the influence of this Maoist, and now it decreased to 41 districts in our country. If you see further more details regarding this topic, it mainly says that these miscreants have been pushed to few pockets with only 25 districts accounting for 85% of left-wing extremism violence. So out of this 41 districts also, 25 districts, they are contributing for 85% of this left-wing extremism violence. So this is a thing that you need to remember. Even though there is influence that is seen in 41 countries, but we can see only 41 districts. So out of this 41 districts, only 25 districts, they are accounting for 85% of this left-wing extremism in our country. And not only this, Union Home Minister, he mainly chaired the meeting mainly to review security and as well as other developmental aspects in this left-wing extremism hit areas. So in this left-wing extremism hit areas, our Home Minister, he chaired meeting, and this meeting it is about mainly to review the security and development aspects in this states which are affected by this left-wing extremism. If you see one important data which mainly says that United States Department of Homeland Security defines left-wing extremism as groups that seek to bring about change through violent revolution rather than through established political processes. So here if you want to write any answer regarding this left-wing extremism, you need to go for definition. So you have to go for authenticated definition. So you can write like according to US Department of Homeland Security, which mainly defines this left-wing extremism. So under this left-wing extremism, the group of people mainly they want to bring about change, but that change they will bring through mainly violent revolution rather than following the procedure, okay, rather than following the established procedure or political processes. So this is the definition of this left-wing extremism, and I hope you understand that left-wing extremism is nothing but when there is a group of people, they want to bring about the change in their society, but they will go through a violent revolution rather than whenever they are not even following this political process, but they want to bring the change in their society, that is through violent means. So this is called as left-wing extremism. So this statement which is according to United States Department's Homeland Security, okay. So now let us move on to background. So what is this? What led to rise of this left-wing extremism? So first important thing that you need to remember here is whenever there is poor governance, whenever there is lack of development, especially we can see this in tribal belts. And even whenever there are some oppressive or exploitative hierarchy of state, and society mainly has pushed the tribal population and they are becoming landless to the margins of survival. So in this area that will leads to rise of this extremism or left-wing extremism. For example, if there is any area which, for example, let us take this is a tribal area which is present nearby forest area. So here whenever there are political parties that are not taking care of this area, and there is a poor governance of this area, and there is lack of development. There will be no proper health facilities, no proper education, no proper drinking water, sanitation, etc. Then in this so and so tribal area or tribal belt, that will leads to oppressive exploitative hierarchy of the state, and now the society mainly pushed this tribal population to out of their habitats. So because of this they become landless, and here because of this that will leads to rise of this left wing extremism. And if you are talking about beginning in Naxalbari, actually this left wing extremism which mainly started or begin in Naxalbari in West Bengal, and even in Telangana region, okay, and in Andhra Pradesh in 1970s, and the movement has since spread to many states, for example Bihar, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and as well as Odisha. So these areas which mainly comes under this red corridor. So whenever you are writing left wing extremism, please try to draw a map and show left wing extremism area. So this area which is mainly affected by this left wing extremism, so this is called as red corridor. You have to draw a diagram like this. So this is red corridor. So now let us try to see what government is doing, whether it came up with any strategy to curb this left wing extremism or not. So one thing I want to say is, whenever any MLA or any MP who is going in that road, actually these people, they mainly block the road, that is Maoists block the road, and they will catch this MP or MLA and they will make the demands. If those demands are not accepted by that person, they will simply kill that person. So this is a thing which mainly seen a number of cases. Recently even combat operation which mainly happened in Chhattisgarh as well, right? So now let us try to see what is the government strategy. So if you are talking about government strategy, one important thing here is Samadhan doctrine. Our government came up with this Samadhan doctrine, and this Samadhan, it is a one-stop solution especially for this left-wing extremism problem, and it mainly encompasses the entire strategy of government from short-term policy to long-term policy. And if you're talking about what is a Samadhan, what it stands for: S for smart leadership, A for aggressive strategy, M for motivation and training, A for actionable intelligence, D for dashboard based key performance indicators, H for harassing technology, A for action plan for each theatre, N for no access to financing. So this is about the Samadhan. And next important government strategy is the national strategy to counter left-wing extremism, which mainly formed in year 2015. And this strategy is one of the multi-pronged, that means multi-dimensional approach, and this approach, it is to combat this left-wing extremism. And here you need to remember what is the aim of this national strategy. The important aim of this national strategy, it is to ensure participatory governance and as well as protection of rights of local tribals people. So whenever we are including or whenever we are coming with a participatory governance or participatory democracy, then we can understand the problems of the people at a ground level, and government can take some steps mainly to address those problems you're facing by the people, especially the ground level, such that will helpful mainly to decrease the challenges of this left-wing extremism. And also government came up with intelligence sharing and even rising of separate 66 Indian reserve battalions, and they are mainly established to curb the menace of these left-wing extremism organizations. And if you're talking about development in this left-wing affected areas, so how far our government came up with development, whether they reached this target or not. So government came up with, first of all, special central assistance. So government came up with this special central assistant, and here under this they want to fill the critical gaps in public infrastructure and even services of emergent nature. So for example, if there is any importance of providing services urgently, so they came up with these services of emergent nature. And next one is they also came up with this road connectivity project. So they came up with this road connectivity project especially in this left-wing affected areas for construction of about 5,412 kilometers of road. And next one is they also came up with skill development. So skill development for especially 47 ITIs and even 68 skill development centers by 2018 to 2019. So these are some important skill development measures. And next one is education initiatives. So before saying that, so how this skill development will be useful. So whenever we are incorporating skill in these people, so they will come out and they will do some jobs, and as well as they will get some employment opportunities. Whenever they are getting employment opportunities, they will get some income as salaries or so and so wages, etc. So because of this, that will help to overall development of their community. And if you're talking about education initiatives, yes, these tribal people or tribal students, they need to get education, proper education. So mainly for education of this tribal people, government came up with this Kendriya Vidyalayas and even Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas. They are providing education. And next one is installation of mobile towers. As you all know, these areas are remotely located. They do not have proper telecommunication access as well. So whenever we are going for installation of these mobile towers, it will be very much helpful for providing telecom connectivity to these people, and they will be connected, right? And next one is financial inclusion. So we need to ensure presence of banking facilities in these areas, and all citizens, they need to have access to these bank facilities within 5 kilometers of their residing areas. So this is just of this topic, and these are some important steps taken by government. And now let us move on to next topic. Title says avoid shifting goalpost. Indian envoy tells China. So here you need to understand what is the meaning of this goalpost. So goalpost means actually if there is a, let us take this is a buffer area between India and China. So it is the India and China border. Let us take this example. So this red line, it is India and China border. So between this border, so some area there will be a buffer area. So buffer area means there should not be any actions should be done, or there should not be any patrolling points here. So there will be some buffer area. But what happens whenever in this buffer area, so if one country mainly tries to overcome or to show dominance over the another country, whenever they are not following the rules and regulations, that is called as a goalpost. So now let us try to see this topic in a very great detail. If you say context, it mainly says that India's envoy to China has called on Beijing to avoid shifting of this goalpost by conflating the immediate challenge of managing disputed border areas. So conflating means nothing but to come together. Okay, so China mainly called that Beijing to avoid shifting goalposts, and finally they want to come together to overcome the challenge of managing the disputed border areas. So where are these disputed border areas are present between India and China? So if you're talking about this is the India-China border, here in the western sector, here in the central sector, and here in the eastern sector, we are having disputes regarding the boundary. In western area, it lays a line of actual control, and the central area we are having at Himachal Pradesh and as well as Uttarakhand. In eastern area, that is in Arunachal Pradesh. So in these areas, we are having this boundary dispute between India and China. And next one is with the long-term negotiations to resolve the boundary dispute, saying both sides they need to follow past agreements, and as well as they need to pursue both objectives on parallel tracks. So here mainly if they want to resolve those issues, they need to follow the past agreements which are present between India and China. So this is the context. And now let us move on to some important details. So here if you see details, it mainly says that the first it is to avoid goalpost. So first we need to avoid shifting of this goalpost. So this is the first important thing they need to focus. And next one is on the both the sides they continue to have conversations about resolving the crisis on this line of actual control. And also they are talking about this disengagement in this Galwan Valley. Actually what happened firstly in the north and as well as south banks of Pangyong So Lake, they came with disengagement, and later on they came up with disengagement in some areas. But there are some friction areas which are remaining between India and China. So now let us try to see what are the reasons for this China-India confrontations. So actually we discussed this in long ago, like I think in March 2020. And now let us try to discuss again. Once again, this will be important from your mains point of view, and it will be also helpful for your revision as well. So India decision made to strengthen this Dabruk Shayok Daulat Beg Oldie Road. So India, which is mainly coming up with this infrastructure projects across the border. So this will be helpful for movement of troops, movement of food, movement of equipments for these troops. So India's decision mainly to strengthen its border infrastructure, that is Darbuk Shayok Daulat Beg Oldie Road. Here Chinese are unhappy. And this one is India's US tilt. Okay, India's US tilt, that is example Quad amid US-China tensions. So in international relations, one thing we need to remember here is friends will be our friend. Friends enemy will be our enemy. So here for China, US is enemy, and for US, India is friend. So because of this, China, it is also enemy for India as well. And China mainly views that India's assertion regarding Gilgit-Baltistan as an implicit attack on the China-Pakistan economic corridor, which is one of China's flagship program. And China is also growing assertiveness. China's growing expansionist policy or assertiveness over the South China Sea also, it is one of important problem between India and China. And not only this, even political and economic tensions that is seen in South China Sea. And the next one is India being a growing power in Asian region. So it is not the thing which is not digestible by China. So these are the some important things that you need to remember. And now let us try to focus on what is this line of actual control. So if you see, this is the northern part of India. So here we have this line of actual control. So this line of actual control is nothing but a demarcation line. So what is this? It is a demarcation line. So this line mainly separates Indian controlled territory from this Chinese controlled territory. And if you see here, we are having this LOC line of control. Here we are having this LAC. So LAC, which is very much different than compared to that of LOC line of control that is present with Pakistan. So these are the some important things that you need to remember. And now let us move on to next topic. Title says ripples over Dal Lake. Air Force planes inspire away with stunning show. So what happened after 14 years, after a gap of 14 years, recently here Air Force plan to inspire this people of Kashmir, that is especially youth of Kashmir, and they are coming up with some aerobatics here. So now let us try to see some details. So here this show mainly was organized as part of ongoing celebrations commemorating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Mainly to commemorate this Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, it mainly organized. And this one is, it was organized to inculcate the spirit of nationalism that can be seen among this Kashmiri youth. And if you're talking about some facts regarding this Dal Lake, so this is image of Dal Lake and you can see the scenic beauty. I love to see this Dal Lake, but I don't know when I will go there. But it is one of my favorite place that it is in my wish list to go there. So Dal Lake, it is mainly located in Srinagar, and it is the capital of our Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, Srinagar is a capital city. In that capital city itself, we are having this Dal Lake. So this Dal Lake, it is a misnomer as Dal in Kashmiri. In Kashmiri, Dal means nothing but a lake. So it is integral to tourism and as well as recreation in Kashmir, and it mainly named as the jewel in the crown of Kashmir or the Srinagar's jewel. So it is called as even Srinagar's jewel and as well as jewel in the crown of the Kashmir. And next one is, it is also an important source of even commercial operations. For example, fishing will be happening there, and even water plant harvesting. So these are some activities that are mainly happens at this Dal Lake. And if you're talking about area of this Dal Lake, which mainly covers about 18 kilometers, okay, 18 square kilometers of area, and there is also having we are also having floating gardens. They are called as Raad, R-A-A-D in Kashmiri. In Kashmir, it is nothing but blossom with lotus flowers. So that blossom can be seen in just in the months of July and August. So the wetland, it is mainly divided by causeways into 4 basins. For example, Gargi Bhal, Lokut Dal, and Bodh Dal and Nagin. And here we can see houseboats are very much famous in this Dal Lake, like for example shikaras. Shikaras are closely associated with the Dal Lake, which mainly provides accommodation to tourists and as well as Srinagar. So these are some important facts. And now let us try to open the map and see the location of this Dal Lake. So here we have this Dal Lake. Above that we are having Wular Lake, and here we have this another lake. So here we have this Dal Lake and Wular Lake. And now let us move on to the next topic. A title says CJI backs 50% quota for women in judiciary. So this is the article I like the most. So everywhere we say that we need reservation. Even in parliament we are talking about we need reservation for women, at least 33% of reservation. But here for the first time in judiciary, our CJI, Chief Justice of India, talking about we need 50% of reservation for women. So it's one of the important news according to me. So now let us try to see this topic in a very great detail. So this will be important from our polity point of view. If you see the context, it mainly says that our CJI, Chief Justice of India, mainly backed 50% of representation for women in judiciary. He said that we need 50% of representation from women, especially in this judiciary. If you see details, it mainly says that it is your right. Our CJI mainly says that it is your right and it is not a matter of any charity. So even, okay, enough of this 1000 years of suppression. So from 1000 years onwards, women are suppressed brutally, right? So even if you are talking about ancient period or ancient history time, yes, women have the important role. But if you see from later Vedic age onwards, there is a brutal suppression of women that is seen, and there were some issues like we can say women like sati is there, and as well as child marriages, and women should not go for education. So there are many restrictions on women. So from 1000 years onwards, there is a suppression of women that is seen. So now CJI says that it is your right, it is not a matter of any charity. So he is mainly speaking to women judges and advocates of Supreme Court, and in an event which mainly organized to facilitate him and the 9 apex court judges. So he mainly talking to women judges and as well as advocates of Supreme Court in a one meeting, and this meeting mainly organized to facilitate him and 9 new apex court judges. So recently there are 9 judges who are appointed to this Supreme Court, right? And if you are talking about data regarding the women representation in judiciary, so CJI said women constituted only about 30% of subordinate courts. Okay, so if you are talking about hierarchy of courts, we are having at top we are having Supreme Court, this apex court. Below that we are having this high court, and below that we are having district courts or subordinate courts. So in subordinate courts we are having just 30% of women contribution, and this one is in high courts women judges, they constitute just 11.5%. And here in Supreme Court we currently have 4 women justice, out of which about out of these 33 judges now at present in Supreme Court, out of this we are having only 4 women. So we can see percentage of contribution of women here is just 12% in Supreme Court. So overall there are about 1.7 million advocates, and here out of this 1.7 million advocates we are having about 15% of women, and only 2% they are elected representatives in the state bar council, and as well as there are other women. So these are some important things. And if you are talking about need, why we need to go for this reservation. So whenever government which is providing reservation of a significant percentage of seats, especially in the law schools and as well as some institutes which provide education regarding the law, so it becomes one important first steps that will help for inclusion of women judges and as well as lawyers with substantially improving and as well as quality justice. So this will happen only when we come up with some changes in our justice system and as well as in our lawyers, judiciary, that is judges, and also finally we can improve the quality of justice delivery. So this is gist of this topic. And now let us move on to next topic. Title says Government Industry Panel drives policy to revive manufacturing. So if we are talking about different sectors in our economy, we are having three sectors. First one is primary, second one is secondary, and third one is tertiary sector. So primary sector, it is mainly dealing with agriculture, and secondary sector, it is our manufacturing sector, and tertiary sector, it is our service sector. So in manufacturing, we are going for setting up of different industries, and we will go for production of goods. And in service sector, we will provide different services like health services, education services, banking services, insurance services, etc. Right? So this article mainly focusing on this manufacturing. So due to this COVID-19 pandemic, almost all the sectors have been affected badly. But only one sector that is showing somewhat positive growth rate, it is agriculture, because of good kharif crops and as well as good monsoon rainfall, etc. But if you see these two, manufacturing service sector, they are mainly showing a negative growth actually. So already from March 2020 onwards, in first quarter we saw negative growth rate of -24, and later in second quarter we saw -7.5. That is negative growth rate of -7.5%, and later on we came with somewhat positive growth. But even though we are seeing there is some lagging in this manufacturing sector, so this article mainly talking about some important panel or committee which came up by the government mainly to review this manufacturing sector. If you see context, it mainly says that a meeting between industry captains and commerce and industry minister after this national lockdown was announced in 2020. So after this nationwide lockdown, a meeting between industry captains and as well as commerce and industry ministry that held, and that meeting led to establishment or setting up of steering committee. So this steering committee, it is for local value addition, manufacturing and as well as exports, or in short it is called as SCALE. The importance of this steering committee, it is to navigate Indian manufacturing away from import dependence pitfalls exposed by pandemic. So we are mainly facing some problem regarding imports. So when we are getting raw materials, then only we can go for production, right? So this is the one important problem that we are facing in this manufacturing sector. So now let us try to see some important details. It mainly says that the group, it is now working on 17 sectors. For example, from toys, textiles, furniture, e-cycles to drones and even fisheries. And India has seen multiple similar committees which mainly set up mainly to enhance the share of manufacturing in the Indian economy. So one thing I want to say here is again some basic fact. So from primary we need to enter into secondary, from secondary we need to go to tertiary. So this is a thing which mainly followed by many developed countries, but India is very special. We left this tertiary and we directly moved towards tertiary. So because of this, the contribution of manufacturing sector in our economy or to our economy, it is very much less compared to that of the service sector. We are good at services. I am not saying we are not good, but we are very much good at services, but we are not that much good regarding manufacturing. But if you are comparing with some other countries like Japan and as well as China, they are very much good at manufacturing than services. And other committees mainly recommended regarding some interministerial and intra-industry cost fair, etc. Okay, and if you are talking about some facts regarding what is this SCALE group, who are the members of this SCALE? So SCALE mainly includes top brass from industry bodies, for example CII, FICCI and as well as ASSOCOM, and even it contains 3 representatives from government with a member secretary as well. So these are the members of this SCALE group. So how this SCALE, it is different from the other committees? So there are 3 important reasons which are mainly cited in this article. So now let us try to see what are those 3. So first one here, it has no deadlines and drafts and no voluminous report. So it has no deadlines, drafts and no voluminous reports. And second one is it does not just gather up ideas from various sectoral players and splash them together for the government to consider, but there will be some usual representations they tend to be. So actually first one is for regarding the deadlines and as well as drafts, there is no voluminous reports. But here the second thing here is like other committees, whenever they are coming up with recommendations, and they are mainly they will force the government to consider those things, but here it will not do like that. And next one is it also follows a rigorous process of consultations and they will go for different consultation processes, and as well as they will come up with various agendas at multiple levels, and also they will try to nudge an alignment of interest where the different stream interactable. So they will go for normally consultations, and even they will go for interactions, and also they will come up with various agendas, etc. So in this way they will come up with a final thing. So this is the gist of this topic. And now let us move on to next topic. A title says proportion of all cancer cases higher in men study. So according to one study which mainly says that cancer cases are seen more in men than compared to that of women. So I want to say one important thing here. If you are comparing with the number of hormones with men and women, men they will be having testosterone, but in women we are having lactogen, we are having oxytocin, progesterone, etc. So because of all these things, so the women they are less vulnerable to different diseases like even heart disease and as well as cancer. But after women when enter into menopause after 45 to 50 years, it will vary in women. So after this 45 to 50 years, whenever women enter into menopause, and then later on she will be very much vulnerable to this disease because of decrease in the influence of hormones in that body, right? So this is about some brief introduction, and now let us move on to what is this cancer. So cancer means nothing but, let us try to understand what is the meaning of tumor. Tumor means, if you see, there is a one cell. So this cell will goes for uncontrollable cell division. So it will go for uncontrollable cell division and will form a tumor. So if you are talking about types of tumor, we are having two types. First one is we are having benign tumors. Next one is malignant tumor. So benign tumor means tumor which is mainly present at that same place. So we can easily identify if there is any tumor here, I can easily identify them, and I can easily go for some surgery like thing, and I can easily remove that tumor. But if you are talking about this malignant tumor, so from one body parts it will reach us another body. Okay, so if at this time if I diagnose so and so tumor which is present on my hand, so if you see after 1 hour I can't find that tumor here, so it might be going to my leg or my stomach or my back. Okay, so in this way this malignant tumor that will be moving from one place to another place in our body. So because of this it is very much difficult to trace them. So here malignant tumor, it is nothing but our cancer. So we can see, for example, like lung cancer, liver cancer, and women they are most probable for ovarian cancer and as well as breast cancer and even cystic cancer. And in men we can see like lung cancer and as well as throat cancer, because whenever people who consume this tobacco, either women or even men, they are most vulnerable to this throat cancer and as well as lung cancer. So now let us move on to data which is given in this topic. So if you see context, it mainly says that the proportion of all cancer cases, they are higher in men. So in men we can see the cancer percentage of 52.4%, and women it is 47.4% because of influence of hormones like estrogen, progesterone, oxytocin, etc. And this is the thing which mainly said by ICMR, Indian Council of Medical Research. Indian Council of Medical Research came up with this report, and this report mainly said this thing. If you move on to further more details regarding this report, in women we can see commonly gynecological cancers, for example breast cancer and as well as cervical cancer, and even like cystic cancer that we can see in this women. And if you are talking about childhood cancers, and they mainly constitute about 7.9% of cancers between 0 to 14 years of children. And the report also said that cancers of head and neck region accounted for about 31.2%. So if you are talking about men, so among those men cancers, 31.2% of cancer that is seen in head and as well as in neck region, that is throat cancer, mouth cancer, etc. And next one is the highest proportion of cancer from all the sites are reported in the age that is 45 to 64 years of age. And next one is the report further states that out of 6 lakh cancer, about 3 lakhs, more than 3 lakhs cancer, they are mainly reported from men, and at most below 3 lakh of cases they are reported from women. And cancer, they are mainly associated with this tobacco use, which mainly comprise about 48.7 percentage. So 48.7% of cancer. One of important reason here is tobacco use. So even if you're purchasing any cigarette packet, then on that cigarette pack also you can see different images like throat cancer, so and so. So there are some warning symbols or warning signs that can be seen on the pack of this cigarettes. But even though people, they will ignore and they will go for taking that cigarettes, and finally they will fall ill due to this cancer. So this is one of the sad thing I can say. And even to raise awareness in even movie theaters also, before starting movie, there is one advertisement regarding Mukesh that will come, right? So here, even though there are number of steps which are taken by government, so tobacco use, the controlling of tobacco use, which is not done perfectly. So let me know what are the reasons behind that. Okay. And next one is the report already stated that over 1/3 of patients with cancers of tongue, pharynx, larynx, thyroid, corpus uteri, and kidney, bladder, and retinoblastoma, they have localized disease at the time of presentation. So these are some common types of cancers like mouth cancer, tongue cancer, larynx cancer. Larynx is nothing but our voice box. And thyroid cancer, kidney cancer, bladder, urinary bladder cancer, etc. And what is the treatment? Treatment here is we have this chemotherapy for this cancer, but it is not completely curable. And next topic is about stopping short of social justice. So this article mainly talking about Justice Ranjan Committee report. So what are the highlights of this report, and what are the important thing that you need to remember here is about how can we ensure social justice. So here, if there is any exam, for example after +2, okay, after inter, we need to enter into different streams. For example, if you are from MPC background, or we can say maths, physics and chemistry, and next one is BPC, biology, physics and chemistry. And for MPC we are having multiple options, like we can go for engineering and we can join degree. There are many options, but if you are talking about BPC, so most commonly students, they will choose this group mainly to become doctor, not even pharmacist like me, but they will try mainly to get a seat in MBBS. But actually there is a one roadblock here. They need to write this NEET exam, right? So this NEET is a very tough exam, and to clear this NEET, they need to take coaching for sure. To take this coaching, every student, they do not have money like me, right? So because of this, so their dream it is to get seat or to become a doctor, but because of this roadblock of NEET, so many students who are aspiring for becoming MBBS doctors, so they are coming back, okay, they are not achieving their dream. So because of this, recently Justice Ranjan Committee, which came with a report regarding this NEET entrance exam. So now let us try to see this topic in a very great detail. So if you see the central theme, which mainly says that the Justice Ranjan Committee report. So the Justice Ranjan Committee report does not provide answers to crucial questions it engages with. So this article mainly says that yes, Justice Ranjan Committee report, which does not provide some answers to the crucial questions. So if you're talking about this article, which mainly says that finally Justice Ranjan Committee came up with a report, and this report is very, very long. It is about 165 pages. So Justice Ranjan Committee came up with a report of 165 pages. So here this report, which is mainly dealing with this NEET, National Eligibility Cum Entrance Test. So here this report says that yes, this NEET, which mainly adversely affected chances of these privileged students to get admissions in government medical colleges in Tamil Nadu. So here this report mainly based on several parameters. For example, students who are studying from especially government schools, and as well as who are mainly having first generation graduation, and as well as who are belonging to the household income which is very much less than to 2.5 lakhs. So these are people, they are mainly not achieving their dream to get seat in government medical colleges in Tamil Nadu. So every one of these criteria mainly demonstrate that they are already having some drawback here, and but here these less privileged people in medical education, they become even more disadvantaged due to this whenever this NEET has been introduced. So whenever this NEET introduced, so that led to most of this less privileged students, they do not get admissions in this medical colleges in Tamil Nadu. So if we're talking about background here, so recently Tamil Nadu Assembly has passed the bill which is mainly based on the recommendations of this high level committee, which mainly led by A.K. Ranjan. So the bill mainly allows admissions to medical courses based on class 12th marks to ensure social justice should not be based on NEET exam. So whenever we are clearing NEET only, that should not be the base to allot medical seats for students. It should be based on IPE marks, that is class 12th marks. And state assembly mainly says that national eligibility cum entrance test, it is not a fair or equitable method of admission, because it is mainly favoring the rich people and elite sections of people who cannot afford coaching. They cannot clear this NEET exam. So if you're talking about arguments which are against this NEET include, so NEET undermines a diverse societal representation. In MBBS, only elite people and only the rich people, they can go for coaching and they can clear this exam, but not less privileged people. So it is only favoring mainly affluent classes of society. And the social groups most affected, they were the students of Tamil medium having a rural background of government schools. So whenever students who are coming from this rural background and especially from the government schools, they are most privileged, most discriminated or most vulnerable. And next one is the students whose parent income which is very much less than to 2.5 lakhs per annum, they cannot afford for their studies. And if NEET is continued, even in our healthcare system of the states, that would be severely affected because already now we are seeing scarcity of doctors. So mainly to come out of that, even Ayush doctors, they are also given permission to practice even allopathy, right? So because of this, even though here if you are going for this type of decision, that will be very much helpful mainly to ensure social equality regarding the education access, especially in this medical education, and even it will be helpful to create enough number of doctors in our primary healthcare centers. So this is the gist of this topic. And now let us move on to next topic. Title says need less row. It is about Rajasthan's law regarding registration of marriages. So if you are talking about this article, why it is in news? Because recently Rajasthan Assembly passed a bill. So this bill, it is regarding amending of 2009 Act. So what is the name of this act? It is about Rajasthan Compulsory Registration of Marriages Act. So here Rajasthan passed a bill to amend this Rajasthan Compulsory Registration of Marriage Act. So under this act, which mainly provides for compulsorily or mandatory registration of marriages, even including child marriages. Whoever they are married, they need to go for registration. It is compulsory now, even if you are going for child marriages as well. So if you are talking about some provisions of this bill, so this bill mandates information on marriages, which mainly include even child marriages. So regarding this child marriage also, they need to go for registration and necessary information should be given by their parents or guardians within 30 days of wedding. And this bill also proposes to amend section 8 of this 2009 Act. So earlier for men and women it was 21 years, and now for women it decreased to 18 years, for men it is 21 years. And who will submit memorandum to registrar? So whoever who completed 21 years, for especially boy, and girl completed 18 years, means they can directly go to the registrar and they can furnish their information. But if you see, whenever bridegroom has not completed this 21 years and bride not completed 18 years, their parents or their guardians, they need to provide information to registrar. So this is a thing which mainly said in this amendment. So finally, what is the essence? Essence here is, even though we are going for child marriage, we need to go for registration. Registration of child marriage is mandatory. So now what are the issues? So under this law, which is not making child marriage null and void, it is just saying that you have to come and you have to register. So it is not saying this child marriages are void. So this is the one important thing, which is the one of the important issue here. So registering such marriages may also establish the legal rights. So whenever we are going for registering of child marriages, that will also providing some legal rights for this child marriages. So this is one of a cause of concern, and even it may also even help prosecution of those who solemnizing child marriages and implementing the provision which is relating to maintenance residence of the girl whose marriage is invalidated later. Okay, so whenever there is any marriage which is made null and void, but already registrations happen, such that it will also solemnize the marriage and as well as implement the provisions here. And next one here is, here nothing prevents a marriage restart from alerting child marriage prohibition. So whenever after marriage, whenever they are coming to this registrar within this 30 days mainly to make registration, so it is not preventing, or it mainly prevents. Okay, it is not preventing this marriage registrar to alert this child marriage prohibition officer here. Okay, he need to simply register that marriage. So this is one cause of concern again. So in this context, what is the need? Parliament ought to consider this Law Commission recommendation to amend this Prohibition of Child Marriages Act of 2006, and we need to make these child marriages which are happening below years of 16 years, that should be void. That means that need to be cancelled. And next one is, whoever who are marrying between 16 to 18 years, they need to solemnize and they need to be also voidable. So this is the gist of this topic. And now let us move on to next topic. A title says flood management that cannot be watered down. So this article mainly talking about India-Nepal flood management. And before seeing this article, I want to make a small announcement. If you want to clear UPSC 2022, we came up with one excellent and highly beneficial course, that is current affairs package along with mains answer writing practice. So how this course will be useful? So one thing you need to remember here is, before entering into examination hall, you need to know at least 1.5 years current affairs, and this is right time to join this course to cover this 1.5 years current affairs in a comprehensive manner. And we are especially focusing on your mains answer writing practice. So there will be daily answer writing practice, on every Sunday there will be essay writing practice. And the next one is, we are also providing you prelims test on every Sunday, and we provide you video explanation part. So in this way, this course which is designed as per demand of UPSC. So finally, I want to say one thing: please don't take this course as a choice. Try to join this course as soon as possible and achieve your dream of clearing UPSC. Details of this course is given in the description box, so please visit that once. And if you want to talk to me directly, you can call to this number 8074765513. Okay. And now let's come back and let us see this topic regarding India-Nepal floods. So what is the problem now? Now we are in rainy season. So even cyclone Gulab have some impact on Odisha and states like Andhra Pradesh and even in Telangana. And here we are seeing there is extreme heavy rainfall since morning here. So because of impact of this cyclone Gulab. So in the same way, because of this monsoon season, there is heavy rainfall that is seen. So because of this, here and there we can see in news like there is overflowing of rivers, and that is leading to floods. So over years, many Bihar districts, they are facing a severe challenges with the recurrent and as well as massive flooding in this many districts of Bihar. So this year too, here Bihar, which is mainly facing double whammy, that is dual problems like flooding on one side and as well as novel corona pandemic on second side. So actually regarding this article we discussed in August month. So in August also there was one editorial which appeared on the same thing like India and Nepal. So let us have a revision. So what are the issues now? So despite there are many efforts which are mainly taken on ground, so even though these efforts are not fruitful, and that is leading to floods in this area. So we are talking about problems of floods in Bihar. Historically, you all know that Bihar, it is also has been known as India's most flood prone state. So Bihar, it is one of most flood prone state. And around 73% of total land area in Bihar, it is flood affected state, and 76% of population of northern Bihar, it faces recurrent threats from floods. And large part of northern Bihar adjoining Nepal, which is mainly drained by number of rivers and their catchment, For example, I can say like river Kosi, river Gandak, river Burhi Gandak, river Bagmati, river Kamla Balan, Mahananda, etc. So let me know which river is called as Sorrow of Bihar. Sorrow of Bihar. Let me know in comment box. And I want to say one thing. So many students are responding in comments. I'm very happy for that. And please try to comment whichever the questions I am asking in this lecture, such that it will be giving some boost or encouragement for me to make such a more videos. Okay. And if you're talking about these rivers are mainly originating in Nepal, and they are coming up with high discharge and as well as sediment load in these rivers, that is creating some havoc in this region. So if we're talking about especially the plains of northern Bihar, they recorded high number of floods, especially in last 3 decades. From last 30 years onwards, we are seeing these rivers are creating havoc in this region. And the total affected area of floods, it is also increased over the years because of changing of the pattern or changing of the pattern of rivers. And next one is the chronic issue of flood. It is making over 5 crore people of North Bihar and Terai in Nepal is also very vulnerable. And if you're talking about history of water cooperation between India and Nepal, actually the cooperation between India and Nepal that mainly started in 1950s itself, and the work regarding this Kosi embankment that mainly started in 1955 itself. And even there was a voluntary participation of this retired Nepali soldiers, and they came up voluntarily to join hands with Indian volunteers to start the work. But recently there are many differences that is seen between India and Nepal relations. For example, we are having some disputes across the border, like border issues like Susta region, right? And here, because of this Kalapani and Susta region, there are some issues which are happening between India and Nepal. So there are some differences which had been happening in matters of floods and as well as water management between India and Nepal. So because of this, there is no proper efficient use of water resources that is seen here. So if you're talking about what are the flaws or what are the issues in water management, so first and the foremost thing that you need to remember here is infrastructure interventions. For example, when we are going for building of embankments and as well as rerouting of the streams, they mainly disturb the conventional flow of water. Okay, conventional flow of slow water, but because of what, whenever we are making any interventions, that will lead to fast movement of water. And even we came up with this Kosi Treaty of 1954, under which embankments in Nepal, they were established and maintained, but they are not futuristic. And it mainly lacking some sensitization of climatic imbalances and even sustainable development. And it does not did not make enough provisions for maintenance of embankments as well. So these are some important flaws that we are seeing here. And now let us try to see what are the measures which are taken by the Bihar. So if we are talking about what are the measures which are taken by Bihar, so first one is our Bihar CM. So our Bihar CM Nitish Kumar made some concept of disaster management which made popular, and he came up with a number of structural measures, and even he mainly focused on awareness. And the CM also came up with a renewed approach in infrastructure augmentation, for example for dams, reservoirs, detention basins, embankments and channel improvement. And he also came up with many non-structural measurements like floodplain management, flood forecasting, warning, etc. And he also came up with flood insurance and as well as financial compensation for people. And what can be done in this situation? So we need finally a greater attention regarding annual calamity of floods, and we need to come up with a dedicated intergovernmental panel and should be formed through a bilateral mechanism. And we need to go for revisiting of our old plans between India and Nepal, and we need to come up with a long-term strategy that need to focus on sustainable water management cooperation. So these are some steps that can be taken, and this is just of this topic. So by this we are concluding today. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like, share and comment my videos. And don't forget to enroll to this current affairs package. Thank you so much.